It's season 16 and you still have yet to drop a 4K damage game. Luckily, I can provide some expert insight on the subject as I've dropped several hundred 4K damage games in my career. I'm gonna start this video off strong, so bear with me. The reason you have not dropped a 4K damage game yet is not because of the lobby, it's because of you. Making excuses for yourself only limits your potential. If you want to excel in this game and in life, that's something you have to stop doing. Now that I got that out of the way, it's time to give you guys 5 expert tips to help you unlock your first 4K damage badge in season 16, using some commentary that I'll be providing for this video of me dropping a 4000 damage game with ease on Stormpoint. Before I get into this video, I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think is holding you back from dropping a 4000 damage game? Go ahead and type your answer in the comments below. Without further ado, let's get it. Bam 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 bam. There is a lot that you do wrong as a player that prevents you from dropping your first 4K damage game. That being said, let's start off with tip number 1, your landing spot. If you want to increase your chances of dropping a 4000 damage game, then you need to start landing at heavily contested POIs or places of interest. Now I'll give you the rundown of places that you should land on every single map this season. But one thing you need to make sure that when you're landing at these heavily contested POIs, that you're landing in a place that's not so heavily contested within that POI. For instance, where I'm landing this game, I drop mills and I drop in the center bins. Most of the time I land here, it's not heavily contested. You might have a guy or two land here with you as well, which is far less contested than the main buildings and mills where everybody lands at. One thing that goes hand in hand with this is your level of self-awareness. I know what I'm capable of, therefore I do it. But a lot of you guys may not be capable of landing in the center of a heavily contested POI, and that's okay. What I would recommend you guys to do is land at a satellite building right next to that POI. That way you can loot up in peace and still be close enough to where everybody's landing at. And as you loot peacefully while everybody else is fighting, by the time you loot up, you can go and push everybody. A lot of them are going to be weak. There will definitely be some knocked players. And that's how you maximize your chances of winning at heavily contested POIs and walking out with good kills and good damage. Now, places to land. On Stormpoint, I land Mills, I land Barometer, I land Cascade, I'll land Antenna, and I'll land Stormcatcher. This greatly depends on the dropship and where it's coming from. Depending on that dropship, any one of these POIs is going to have a lot of players landing there. So I would recommend that you pick one of these spots, pick some loot bins or an adjacent building to land at near that POI, and then work your way inwards from there. Remember that tip. Now for World's Edge, I only land at Cap City, aka Fragment East and West for all you new players out there. Personally, I land 5-stack building and I land on the second floor every single time. That's the least contested floor. I strongly encourage you to land there, as about 20 to 30 players will land there every single game. I recommend landing at that POI, but I don't recommend landing in the building that I land in. For all you players that struggle to get a 4K, I recommend that you land at the broken building right next to the bridge in the center of that POI. That place, along with the market right next to it, is very uncontested. And if you simply just don't like that POI at all, then I also recommend Lava Siphon. That has a lot of players that land there. Either one of them will work just fine. Lastly, for Broken Moon, I recommend that you guys land Terraformer or the Core. For both of these places, I recommend landing at the loot bins that are just outside of the main building. I do not recommend landing at any of the main buildings in these places, as those are the most contested places within that POI. So by now, you'll see that I have 4 kills with 1000 damage with 41 people left in this game. That's a very good spot to be in if you're trying to drop your first 4000 damage game. For tip number 2, let's talk about rotations. Knowing where to rotate to after you fight everybody off rip is just as important as landing hot. I mentioned this in the beginning of the game, but a lot of you guys like to blame the lobby and the pace of the lobby as to why you can't drop these high damage games. A lot of you guys just flat out say that you simply can't find anybody. There are reasons as to why you struggle with finding people, so let me help you. There are always 2 points in every map that you should rotate between. As you see in this video on Stormpoint, if I land on the eastern or southeastern side of the map, I should make my way westward towards Antenna, Launchpad, or Cascades. In that general area, you're always going to find people. Now on the flip side, if I landed at any one of those POIs that I just mentioned, then maybe you should make your way eastward, back towards Mills, Barometer, etc. This logic holds true to the other maps as well. If you're landing at World's Edge and you land at Cap City, 99% of the time the circle is going to close in on Cap City and you should just stay put. People will naturally come to you after you've killed everybody there. But on the off chance they don't come there or the circle takes you away, then make your ways towards Lava Siphon, and vice versa. If you land at Lava Siphon, then you should be going towards Cap City. And lastly, for Broken Moon, if you land at Terraformer, please make your way to the Core. And if you land at Core, then make your way to Terraformer. Those are the rotations that I make every single game on these maps, and I never struggle with finding people. If it helps you to remember, then write this down, because I know so far it's been a lot of information. And then once you've made these rotations on every map and you've wiped out all these POIs, from there it's literally just running throughout the map, listening for gunshots. If I ever struggle to find people, then I actually shoot up into the air to mimic the sounds of a gunfight so that people push me. You know how excited people get when they hear gunshots in the middle of the game. So these are things that I often do to help increase the chances of me finding people. Damn, I really be giving you guys the secret sauce. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Now for tip number 3, let's talk about your weapon choice. I'm gonna just keep it simple. I recommend double spray weapons. Personally, I always use a medium to long range weapon and a close range weapon as my backup. Using these two weapons, I'm able to cover all ranges comfortably. Now, I know there are many of you guys out there that love different types of weapons, but again, this video is for people that have never dropped a 4K damage game in their life. I'm going to strongly recommend that you stop using shotguns, snipers, and LMGs if you want to drop your first 4K damage game. It'll make it easier for yourself to drop high damage games if you have a lot of firepower. Since I know that you guys like to know this information, for my primary spray weapon, I use a Flatline, R301, or Nemesis. And as my secondary close range spray weapon, I use the R99, the CAR, or the Prowler. And I use all of them interchangeably. These guns do eat up a lot of ammo, so make sure you're carrying a lot of ammo stacks in your backpack. Which leads me to tip number 4, your inventory. What should your inventory look like when you're trying to drop your first 4,000 damage game? Above all else, you're going to need a lot of ammo and a lot of batteries. This is a public match, so you don't need to be super strategic with your backpack. You don't need to carry a bunch of grenades like you would in ranked. You don't really need an assortment of different types of heals. You should easily be carrying 400 to 500 stacks of ammo, and that's for both of your guns in total, and anywhere from 5 to 10 batteries. When dropping your first 4,000 damage game, you're going to be taking a lot of fights, obviously. Because of that, you're going to need a lot of ammo since you're going to be shooting a lot. Because your armor is your first line of protection, you need to carry a lot of batteries, assuming that you take a lot of damage as well. Batteries are important because it's the quickest way that you can achieve 100 health. 100 flesh health using a med kit takes 8 seconds. Pop in a battery for 100% of your shield only takes 5 seconds. You also want to prioritize batteries because you will survive without any shield, but you die as soon as you hit 0 flesh health. Which means that if you're able to pop a battery, that means we know for certain that you have more than 1 HP for your flesh health. That means every time you pop a battery for 100% of your shield, you will always have some flesh health, because remember, if you don't have any flesh health, you are dead in this game. So if I have purple armor and it got cracked and I'm down to 50 HP, if I pop a battery, now I have 150 health. Whereas if I pop the med kit, I only have 100 health max. You see where I'm going with that? This is why batteries are so important. Now, if I have a purple backpack, I'm going to carry about 300 ammo for my primary weapon and about 120 ammo for my secondary weapon. I would like to carry at least 6 batteries, which leaves me room for about 4 to 8 shield cells, 4 syringes, a couple of medkits, and a Phoenix kit. If you can make it to endgame with about 2,000 damage, all that ammo and all of those heals, you are in a good position to now drop your first 4,000 damage game. Which leads me to the last tip, tip number 5, farming. Excuse the sirens, thanks to you guys and your support, I now live in downtown LA, and it's nothing but crime and activity over here. So if I ever get caught up, you know why. Tip number 5, farming. Farming is the best way to achieve your first 4,000 damage game, and you can kind of see it at the end of this video. I wasn't intentionally farming, but nonetheless I did farm this team for a decent amount of damage. But there are many times where I do intentionally farm a team only for educational purposes, to show you guys how easy it is and how solid of a method it is to gain consistent 4K damage games. The last 2 squads alive, I'm able to farm from 3,500 damage to 4,700 damage. I farmed 1,200 damage off the last 2 teams alone. So you may ask, how do you go about this farming method? You want to wait until you're top 3 to start farming the last couple squads. And all it is maintaining your distance between you and the enemies, using that long range weapon that I told you to use at the beginning of this video, and just putting shots into the enemy over and over and over again, allowing them chances to heal up in between as well, and just repeating the process continuously. Farm damage, let them heal up, continue farming damage, maybe even get a knock on one guy to make it easier for yourself to win that game. When you do decide to knock that guy, please thirst him. As always, you should always be thirsting every enemy that you see or that you knock to get an extra 100 damage. That counts for your overall 4,000 damage. And then, like I said, just repeating the process. Maintaining your distance is the most important part to farming. One way that you can maintain your distance between you and the enemy is either by falling back or continuously rotating so that the enemy doesn't have a chance to keep up with you. Rotating between head glitches, getting new angles that allows you some cover but kind of exposes the other enemy, things like that. And then the other way to keep that distance is heavy damage output, cracking that enemy over and over and over again so that they're forced to heal, unless of course they're just a bad player and they push you even when they're not healthy. But in most cases, good and bad players, once they get cracked, they're going to start healing up. And it would be at that point you could start taking new angles, new rotations, falling back, etc. and continuing your heavy damage output to keep them in a susceptible position. You now have the upper hand in that fight, You now control the pace of that fight, and you now control how much damage you can milk out of that team. A team simply can't kill you if you're cracking them over and over and over and over and over. Like the great Marshawn Lynch once said, if you smack a motherfucker in their face over and over and over and over again, they ain't gonna be able to take it. And that logic remains true when you're trying to drop your first 4,000 damage game. And I always forget, play duos. Play duos. I always seem to forget that when I make these videos. As always, I hope you guys learned something. Those were my 5 best tips to dropping your first 4,000 damage game. If you learned something or you enjoyed it, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bam, 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 bam. Bam, 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 bam. Bam, 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 bam.